For decades, Europe has been cast as a continent in decline, its population aging, its workforce shrinking, and its future seemingly uncertain. The image is familiar: cobblestone streets filled with elderly citizens, while the younger generation appears to dwindle, and the energy of the continent seems to fade. Headlines warn of welfare states teetering on the brink, with social safety nets stretched thin and governments scrambling to keep up with rising costs. The story is one of empty cradles, where playgrounds echo with silence, and retirement homes overflow with those who once built the continent's prosperity. Economists warn of a looming fiscal crisis, as fewer workers support more retirees, and the balance between generations grows ever more precarious. This narrative is so entrenched that it's accepted as fact from Washington to Beijing, shaping global perceptions and policy debates about Europe's future. But what if this story is incomplete, or even wrong? What if the challenges Europe faces are not signs of inevitable decline, but opportunities for reinvention and growth? Imagine a Europe where older citizens are not just passive recipients of care, but active contributors, volunteering, retraining, and sharing wisdom with younger generations. What if Europe's demographic challenge is not a catastrophe, but a test it's quietly learning to pass, through innovation and adaptation? New analysis reveals that Europe's systems are more resilient than the headlines suggest. Behind the scenes, policymakers, businesses, and communities are finding creative solutions, rethinking retirement, investing in lifelong learning, and redesigning cities for all ages. The real story is one of adaptation, of a continent methodically rewiring its social and economic systems to cope with change. From modernizing infrastructure to fostering intergenerational collaboration, Europe is quietly building a new model for aging societies. Europe's experience holds lessons for the world, as every major economy faces the consequences of an aging population. The choices made here today could shape the future for billions elsewhere. When we look past the headlines, a different, more optimistic picture of Europe emerges, one where age is not a burden, but a source of strength, and where the old continent is writing a new story for the world to see. Recent research from Bruegel, a leading European think tank, has brought fresh perspective to the ongoing debate about Europe's demographic future. Drawing on the European Commission's comprehensive 2024 Aging Report, these findings challenge the widespread narrative of inevitable demographic doom that has dominated headlines for years. Contrary to popular belief, the fiscal burden of aging in the European Union is expected to rise only modestly, by about 1.4 percentage points of GDP by 2070. This projection stands in stark contrast to the more dramatic increases anticipated in other major economies. This is far from the fiscal apocalypse that many experts and commentators once predicted for Europe. Instead, the continent is demonstrating remarkable resilience in the face of demographic change. Years of careful, sometimes politically challenging reforms, such as raising retirement ages, adjusting pension formulas, and encouraging longer workforce participation, have helped to defuse the so-called pension time bomb that once threatened Europe's economic stability. As a result, Europe is not on a path to bankruptcy or crisis. Instead, it is steadily and thoughtfully navigating its demographic transition, maintaining social cohesion and economic stability for both current and future generations. While countries like the United States and China now face much steeper fiscal challenges due to rapidly aging populations and less comprehensive reforms, Europe's quiet, persistent efforts have paid off, setting it apart on the global stage. The old continent, often seen as a symbol of stagnation, may now offer a valuable blueprint for other nations seeking to manage demographic change without sacrificing prosperity or social well-being. It's time to update the global conversation about aging. Europe's story is not one of decline, but of adaptation, resilience, and hope for a stable future in an aging world. What exactly is the aging cost? It's the total public spending, as a share of GDP, on pensions, healthcare, long-term care, and education. As populations age, pension and healthcare costs rise, but education spending often falls as there are fewer children. The net aging cost is the increase in spending on the elderly, minus savings from reduced education costs. This comprehensive measure gives a true picture of fiscal pressure. Focusing only on pensions is misleading. It's the net effect across all age-sensitive spending that matters. By comparing these costs across regions, we see why Europe's outlook is less dire than feared. Data-driven analysis replaces fear with clarity. When we compare Europe to the United States and China, the often repeated narrative of European decline starts to unravel. While headlines may focus on Europe's aging population and economic challenges, a closer look reveals a more nuanced and even optimistic story. Europe's approach to demographic change is distinct, and in many ways, more sustainable than its global peers. For example, the European Union's aging-related costs are projected to rise by just 1.4 percentage points of GDP by 2070, a manageable increase, especially when you consider the scale of the challenge. This relatively modest rise is the result of decades of careful planning, policy adjustments, and a willingness to adapt social systems to new realities. By contrast, the United States is expected to see its age-related spending surge by about 5 percentage points of GDP, while China faces an even steeper climb, with projections ranging from 7 to 10 percentage points. These numbers highlight just how much more severe the fiscal impact of aging will be outside Europe. One key reason for Europe's relative stability is that it began aging earlier than the US or China. This head start gave European countries more time to adapt, allowing for gradual increases in the old-age dependency ratio rather than sudden shocks. Over decades, Europe has incrementally adjusted its pension systems, healthcare provisions, and labor markets to accommodate an older population. In contrast, China is now facing a rapid demographic shock. Its population is aging at an unprecedented pace, but its social safety nets and pension systems remain underdeveloped, especially in rural areas. This leaves millions of elderly Chinese vulnerable and puts immense pressure on families and local governments. The United States, despite having a younger population profile, is grappling with its own set of challenges. Healthcare costs are notoriously high, and political gridlock in Washington often blocks meaningful reform. As a result, the U.S. struggles to control spending and ensure long-term sustainability for its aging population. Europe, on the other hand, has implemented proactive reforms over the years, raising retirement ages, encouraging older adults to stay in the workforce, and promoting healthy aging. These measures have helped contain costs and maintain a higher quality of life for seniors, while the US and China now face much steeper challenges. Ultimately, the fiscal burden of aging is shaped as much by policy choices as by demographics themselves. Countries that plan ahead and adapt their systems can manage the costs, while those that delay action face mounting pressures. So, while Europe is often portrayed as sclerotic or stuck in the past, the reality is that it's actually leading the way in preparedness for an aging society. European seniors are more active, engaged, and supported than ever before. In the global race to adapt to demographic change, the so-called old continent is proving to be surprisingly spry, showing the world that with foresight and smart policy, aging can be managed and even embraced as a source of strength. Europe's secret, a multi-pronged strategy of reform and adaptation, comprehensive pension reforms, raising retirement ages and linking them to life expectancy, keep people working and contributing longer. Many countries shifted to pension systems that tie payouts more closely to lifetime contributions, stabilizing finances. Advances in public health mean Europeans are living and staying healthy, longer, moderating healthcare costs. Preventative care and efficient health systems help keep spending in check. Immigration, though controversial, brings younger workers who bolster the workforce and tax base. This combination, pension reform, healthy aging, and migration, forms the core of Europe's success. It's not one policy, but a sustained, adaptive approach. Europe's stability masks deep regional divides. Southern Europe faces higher costs due to low birth rates and slower reforms. Eastern Europe struggles with both low birth rates and massive emigration, shrinking their workforce and tax base. Migration within the EU acts as a demographic rebalancing. Workers from East support aging populations in the West. This mobility helps stabilize the EU, but creates challenges for countries losing young talent. Eastern Europe must foster growth and opportunity to slow the brain drain. For the EU, cohesion policies and managing migration's impact are key to long-term resilience. The free movement of people is both a strength and a challenge for Europe's future. Europe's demographic shift is part of a global trend. The world is getting older. Rising life expectancy and falling fertility rates are reshaping societies everywhere. Aging is a sign of progress, but it strains public finances and can slow economic growth. Every major economy now faces this challenge. Europe has led with reforms, while Asia's aging giants invest in automation and experiment with boosting birth rates. Developing countries risk aging before building strong safety nets. Europe's experience stands out as the first large-scale test of managing demographic transition. Despite political struggles, Europe has shown it's possible to adapt without dismantling the social contract. Its journey offers a roadmap for nations just beginning to face this challenge. What can the world learn from Europe's experience? First, early and incremental reform works. Europe started adjusting pensions and social systems decades ago. Second, resilience comes from a mix of policies: pension reform, healthy aging, and managed migration. No single solution suffices. It's the synergy that matters. Europe's social model, often criticized, actually enabled tough reforms by building consensus. The goal was modernization, not dismantling, proving social solidarity and fiscal responsibility can coexist. Europe's story is one of pragmatic, evidence-based governance, quietly shaping its own demographic destiny. For a world facing similar pressures, Europe's lessons are more relevant than ever. Europe's progress is real, but the work isn't done. Policymakers must stay the course on pension reform, resisting the urge to roll back changes. Investing in healthy aging, lifelong learning, and flexible work will keep older workers productive. Migration policy needs to be coherent and humane, integrating newcomers and addressing brain drain in the East. Boosting productivity and labor force participation, especially among women and underrepresented groups, is essential. Economic growth is the ultimate buffer against demographic pressure. Europe has built a resilient framework. Now it must reinforce it. The challenge isn't over, but Europe is poised to turn demographic change into stable prosperity.